What is up, Pitt fans? Thank you so much for tuning in to Inside the Panthers on YouTube. My name is Stephen Thompson, coming to you from the Peterson Event Center after a historic night in Oakland and a historic night for Pitt basketball. The Panthers knocked off Louisville by a final score of 86-59. They have now won 7 of their last 8. They're tied for 4th place in the ACC standings. We'll get into that a little bit more later, though, because tonight was all about one man, and that was Blake Hinson. It is incredibly poetic, the journey that this guy has had. The way he started at Ole Miss, he goes to Iowa State, he sits out 2 years, and then he comes to Pitt, and he immediately becomes one of the brightest stars that this program has seen in a long time. And he put forth a masterpiece tonight that people will be talking about for a long time. It is almost unparalleled what this guy's been able to do. He was knocking on the door of the all-time scoring record in Pitt history. Scored 41 points, 14 of 24 from the field, 9 of 13 from three-point range, 4 or 5 from the field. Oh, and he was third on the team, with 5 rebounds as well. He set a couple of career high marks in this game, obviously a career high in scoring. He set that with 19 minutes left in the second half. He tied his own career record for 3-pointers made in the game with 9. That's also a school record. And he was 4 short of the Pitt school record for scoring in a single game. That was the history. And I think, we know Blake for his shooting. We know Blake for that 3-point game. But this kind of stuff doesn't happen last year, primarily because there were a bunch of other scorers that Blake had to share the ball with, but also because Blake has really evolved as a player. And Jeff Capel mentioned this in his post-game press conference. I think it's been most evident over these past couple of games is how Blake has evolved as a multi-level scorer. He is driving the ball. He's driving under control. He has counter moves for when you try to cut something off. He can handle the ball a little bit better. He can shoot the mid-range. He can stop on a dime. He can pass out of it to get his teammates open. He has come so far as a player, and he has emerged as a true 3-level threat. He is almost unguardable when he's on. I mean, Kenny Payne talked about it. They tried to double him, and he would pass out of the double. They tried to front him, and he would cut and get baskets off of that. Every time they tried to stop him from getting to a spot, every time they tried to stop him from getting the ball, period, Hinson had an answer for it. And I think you take a step back and you're in the moment. You're watching this great crowd that they had at the Peterson Event Center enjoy what felt like a ceremonial evening. This was a bad Louisville team. This was the team that Pitt was always supposed to beat, that they were going to manhandle pretty much no matter what. That is true before you learned that Louisville was down 2 of their top playmakers to injury in Sky Clark and Tyler Johnson. And they got to witness a guy make history in a place that he says has changed his life. And that's what I mean by poetic. I mean, a couple of days after Hinson goes on the Jeff Capel radio show and talks again, because this is something that he has mentioned time and time again, that Pitt changed his life. Pitt believed in him when there isn't really much of a reason to. I mentioned those 2 years where he sat out at Iowa State. There wasn't really any reason to believe, and I was guilty of this as well, to not believing that he would really amount to much, not believing that he would, there just wasn't a lot to grab onto. And Hinson quickly proved that there is a lot to grab onto, that he was still the same player, if not better, than he was at Ole Miss or in high school or at Iowa State. That whoever gave this guy a chance was going to get a really fantastic player. And now, after watching that performance, after watching what he's done over the past 2 seasons, I forgot to mention that he surpassed the 1,000-point mark for his Pitt career in this game as well. He did that early in the first half. And when you think about the context of it, he's the 4th fastest player to ever do that in Pitt history. When you think about all the wins that he has stacked, I mean, his hot streak this year has really keyed this in-season turnaround that has allowed Pitt to get back into the NCAA tournament picture. And that's on top of what he did last year, leading the team in scoring and rebounding as they went to their first NCAA tournament in 7 years. When you just take into account the wins, the counting stats, the individual accolades on top of the leadership and the emotional impact and just the joy that he has brought back to Pitt basketball when it was at its lowest. It's hard to understate or to overstate, what Hinson has done for Pitt basketball, and he'll tell us all about what Pitt basketball has done for him. But I think it's Pitt basketball is a little more grateful for what he's done for this program. So it's a time where when you watch a performance like that, when you start going through the media guide, looking at record books, looking at the names that he's sitting alongside, we're going to start talking about where he ranks among, all-time great Pitt basketball players. I mean, we've had guys who've scored a lot. We've had guys who have led winning. We have guys who have been fun to watch and fun to cover and fun to follow their careers. But Blake Hinson is a confluence of a lot of things. And just, I think the combination of timing and coupled with who he is and what he's done has just made him into a truly special player at a truly special moment in Pitt basketball history. And we're going to have to start talking about where this guy ranks among all of the Pitt greats in history, because you see the names that he's listed against when you check out that record book in the media guide. I mean, it's Billy Knight, it's Don Hennon, it's tons of others, Ashton Gibbs. I mean, it's a million other dudes that we were hanging on to for so long as some of the best to ever play in a Pitt uniform, and Blake Hinson is certainly putting his name in there as well. Not only was this a blowout win, not only was this a historic night, but this was a big moment in the present. The Pitt Panthers, they have won 7 of their last 8, and by virtue of Virginia's win over Wake Forest earlier today, the Panthers are now up to 4th in the ACC standings. They're tied with Wake Forest. They have the tiebreaker in hand by virtue of a 77-72 win over the Demon Deacons earlier this season on this floor, and they'll have another chance to face the Demon Deacons. It's actually their next game up. The Panthers are rolling right now, and it's you wonder just how high they can climb, because 4th place obviously within reach, and that's a big deal on its own. It's a double bye in the ACC tournament, which, I mean, at this point, I think it's fair to think about, can this team make a run in the ACC tournament? Can they make a run for an ACC championship? And they are helping themselves climb that ladder and climb into the conversation as one of the best teams in the ACC, period. I mean, they're one of the hottest teams right now, and I think soon enough, we're going to look at those wins over Virginia. We're going to look at those wins over Duke, and we're going to start begging for a chance to see Carolina again. As of right now, Pitt would be the 4th seed. They would play, I believe, in the second game on Thursday, in the ACC tournament. And if they win that, they would automatically go to the semifinals against North Carolina, and then who knows from there. They'd have to win that quarterfinal game, but they're already there. They would get some rest after the end of the season, rest those weary legs, and then come back fresh, ready to make a postseason run. So a real landmark win. Pitt got help from elsewhere around the conference as well. Clemson and NC State. That's a big game as well, just to kind of figure out who's going to jump into that 4th place tie with them. I believe there will be another team in there. Whoever wins that Clemson North NC State game will jump into that 4th place spot as well, along with Wake and Pitt. But a bunch of teams got off of their tails. Syracuse lost, Virginia Tech lost, Florida State lost, and there's one other that I am forgetting to mention. But pretty much everything that had to break right for Pitt today did. And we'll talk about their NCAA tournament chances in a second. But, I mean, when you think about their position in the ACC right now, what this team is capable of doing in conference, I mean, even before you talk about NCAA tournament chances, something bigger than that, I think it's really meaningful that this team has clawed back from a 1-5 start, kind of coinciding with this really incredible hot streak from Blake Hinson, and they have climbed back into ACC contention, and we'll talk about NCAA tournament chances. Speaking of those NCAA tournament chances, it feels like the Panthers control their own destiny. I mean, I was riding back from Charlottesville, and I was asked, do you think Pitt makes the tournament? Just a gut check. And in my gut, I said no at the time, because I thought, they were going to slip up at some point, that they were going to have some loss that really messed up their odds. But the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't come up with a reason why they would get knocked out of the NCAA tournament picture. After that win over Virginia, they were firmly on the bubble. And after a win over Louisville, after they take care of business in really emphatic fashion here today, it's hard not to feel like, and I truly believe this, that the Panthers control their own destiny going into the ACC tournament and just down the stretch of the regular season. It's pretty much win and you're in at this point. The Panthers have 6 games left. They travel to Wake Forest. They face Virginia Tech at home, travel to Clemson, travel to Boston College, home against Florida State and NC State to wrap up the regular season. I mean, You take care of that Louisville win. You take care of that Virginia Tech game. You take care of Boston College, Florida State, and NC State, another team that you've beaten. You've got 2 opportunities for quad 1 wins against Wake Forest and Clemson. And to be quite honest, I mean, they can lose those 2 games. They probably have to do some work in the ACC tournament if they do, but you just win the games against teams that you would say on paper they're better than, and I'd say that is Virginia Tech, Florida State, Boston College, and NC State. I mean, those are teams who are kind of falling off of the rails while Pitt is really becoming one of the hottest teams in the ACC, and you put yourself in a great position. You're either in the same spot that you were last year going into the NCAA tournament or into the ACC tournament, where most people thought they only had to win 1 game, and they did that. They beat Georgia Tech. They sneak into the NCAA tournament. It's probably the same deal here, even if you lose that Wake Forest game, that Clemson game. They've got their 2 biggest wins already locked down. They've got great resume wins in that Duke win on the road and that Virginia win on the road. And you factor in a Virginia Wake Forest win here at home. The computers still like Wake Forest, and that looks like an NCAA tournament resume. You've got the marquee wins. You're starting to grow that win total, and you're climbing to the top of a Power 5 league in terms of those standings. So I really think Pitt controls their own destiny, which is a great place to be in, but also somewhat of a anxiety-ridden place to be in. But where else would you be rather be around this time of year? Pitt has earned the right to play meaningful games in February and March, and that's exactly what they're going to do. And it's better than needing help on the bubble. I mean, they would take some help on the bubble right now. There are a bunch of teams still fighting for those spots, and they got some of that help today with a Kansas State loss. There were some other teams on the bubble that fell off. I mean, including Wake Forest as well. They're glad to get that help, but I don't think they need it, quite honestly. I think if the Panthers keep winning, you steal one of those Wake or Clemson games on the road and win the rest of the ones that you're supposed to, and you're in great shape, not just going into the ACC tournament, but going into Selection Sunday. Right? Quite honestly, you might not even win if you only lose one of the more of these last 6 games, which – look, that's entirely possible. It's entirely possible that they run the table towards the end of the year. I mean, who's to say? I mean, this Pitt team is as hot as anyone in the ACC and as hot as anyone in college basketball. This resume is getting harder and harder and harder to ignore. They entered today as pretty much every major bracketologist one of their next 4 out. So you have to imagine the Panthers keep climbing with a little bit of help on the bubble, and they've got plenty of runway left to go into the the ACC tournament. I keep screwing that up. To stack some wins and to really secure this resume and to really bottle it up and really give themselves a great deal of confidence going in to the postseason. Before I get out of here, I want to touch on, some of the supporting cast. I mean, first of all, Bub Carrington and Jalen Lowe, the two standout freshmen, only 2 turnovers between those 2 and 13 assists. They were wonderful getting everyone involved. That includes Hinson. That includes the rest of their teammates who combined to put up the rest of the 45 points that the Panthers scored today. They were masterful orchestrating the offense. They have shown that they're able to grow up. And like I said, Louisville was down a couple guards. They couldn't pressure as much as they used to, as they would otherwise, because they were so thin. And look, I get it. This is a bad Louisville team. You don't need to tell anyone that. But, I mean, still not impressive nonetheless for 2 freshman guards to go 13-2 in terms of assist to turnover ratio. Federico, one of these glue guys that I've been a big fan of, especially lately. 8 points, 8 rebounds, an even split between 4 offensive and 4 defensive rebounds, an assist, a block shot, and just 2 fouls and no turnovers. He was tremendous defensively on Brandon Huntley-Hatfield, who Jeff Capel told us over his last 4 games, I believe, was averaging just under 20 points per game. So he was really riding a hot streak, and Federico held him to a very paltry 12 points on 6 of 10 shooting from the field. He only had 3 rebounds as well. So a great job by Federico. And then also I want to finish it up with Zach Austin, a guy who doesn't get a ton of shine, but scored 7 points, grabbed 4 rebounds, 2 assists as well. He also had a block shot and 2 steals. He's another one of these glue guys who just, it's subtle what he's doing, but he is doing all those hustle plays. He's playing fantastic defense. He's rebounding, and he's keeping the energy up. And so I don't want Zach Austin to go forgotten, because he's playing at a really high level as well. And he's been a big part of why the Panthers are rolling right now. I mean, obviously look at the scoring that Hinson and Jalen Lowe and Ish Leggett and Bub Carrington are doing. And it's easy for that stuff to steal the headlines, but Zach Austin deserves a ton of shine because he's playing really well as well. It just doesn't show up as much in the box score. With that, I'm going to head out of here. Thank you all so much for tuning into Inside the Panthers on YouTube. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow all of our reporting at InsideThePanthers.com. You can find our YouTube page at youtube.com/@InsideThePanthers. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Like I said, I'm signing off here from the Peterson Event Center, and I'll see you all